Hi, I'm Amy.
I'm Laura.
And we are TwoPaperGirls.
Today we're back with another Top 5 Wednesday, and this week's topic is Top 5 Gateway Books. So basically when you're not sure of a genre and you read a book and it's a really good introduction into that genre and you think if other people are not sure where to start, these would be good places to start.
I'm just going to start because my first one is not a surprise. It is All My Friends Are Superheroes by Andrew Kaufman. This is a great gateway book into the world of magical realism. I know Laura's read a few magical realist books recently, like the Ava Lavender book.
Yeah.
And I read High Mountains of Portugal by Jan Martel, which has lots of elements of magical realism. But this is such a short, lovely book, and it's so lovely and light-hearted, and also a bit of a contemporary, so if you like that genre, it's also a good segue into magical realism. And also it is very weird, but it's also very enjoyable and understandable, so I would really recommend this.
We're doing these in no particular order, so my number 5, my first choice, is The Enchanted by Renee Denfeld, and this fits into the genre which I personally don't like the name of, but it's called literary fiction. Basically when it's an adult book with lots of metaphors and deeper meaning that can be quite intimidating. It's not your chick flick, but it's also not at all YA. And I've read quite a few books like that at A-level literature. We read The Kite Runner and Enduring Love. But I recently read The Enchanted and I thought it was really, really good because it's pretty short, so if you're scared of venturing from YA to adult books, this is a good place to start because the language is really understandable. There's lots of metaphors. There's the tiniest hint of magical realism, but it's also just a nice metaphor. But yeah, it's just quite an adult topic and it's just told really beautifully. And yeah, I just think this is a really good place to start if you want something that's got a little bit more depth to it than 16-year-olds fancying boys and stuff. This has no it has a tiny bit of romance, but it's just really good. It's a really good book to read in general if you're interested in literary fiction.
My next genre is apocalyptic fiction, of course, so one of the books that I choose, I've actually got 2 for this, is The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey, because this is a zombie novel, apocalypse. It's really, really good, really well written. I would recommend going and see the film, because I know it's not out yet, but it looks amazing. And also another book that I want to recommend is We All Looked Up by Tommy Wallach, because this is about the lead up to the apocalypse, but it's not clear whether it happens or not. It's all left to your imagination. It's about an asteroid going to hit the Earth and destroy it, and it's just really, really good. And both of these books have a lot of emotion towards them. It's not just about the craziness that goes on, it's about how people actually cope with it, and I just really recommend them as really good. And also adult fiction as well, they fit into both really well.
My next one's a bit of a weird one, but it seems like I can't do a single video without mentioning Shakespeare at the minute. But Shakespeare's very intimidating. I know lots of people want to either get into classics or specifically Shakespeare, and if you don't study it at school, or even if you do, it's just obviously very scary. This is a complete works and no one's going to pick this up for a bit of light reading on the beach, are they? So my recommendation, I've read a lot of plays, and I'd say a good place to start is Macbeth, because I feel like Shakespeare's main 3 famous ones are Macbeth, Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet. And we all kind of find Romeo and Juliet a bit sigh-worthy. Everyone knows the plot and it's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit over the top. Hamlet's amazing, but it's also very big and scary. So Macbeth is really quite short, but you might know a bit about the storyline and it's very readable. There's lots online if you get confused, so many things you could watch or read to help you understand it. And once you get your teeth into it, it's just such a good play. It's really, really good. And there's not too much about it where you have to know about the time period he was writing in to understand it. It's just a really good story about a soldier and witches and prophecies, and I'd really recommend Macbeth if you want to get into Shakespeare.
My next genre is actually one that I don't particularly like, but when I read this book, I hadn't read much sci-fi before, and I really, really enjoyed it, and that is More Than This by Patrick Ness. I didn't really realise this was going to be a sci-fi book. It's got a lot more to it than just sci-fi. It's got LGBTQ themes, and it's just really good book about sci-fi. It's just dystopian, really, really good. It's hard to describe, but I haven't read it for a while, and I've been saying that I wanted to reread it this summer and I never got round to it, but I really, really recommend it if you want to get into sci-fi, and like me, you don't really like it when it's all computerised and too much over technological things.
My next one is for the thriller mystery genre, and that is Before I Go to Sleep by S.J. Watson. I know a lot of people read books like Gone Girl and that's their gateway into the genre, but I feel like a lot of people have seen the Gone Girl film or they've been spoilt for it. And The Girl on the Train is good, but it's not as good as this. This is really, really good, and not many people talk about it. There is a film as well, which you could watch with Colin Firth and stuff in, but it's not got the hype around it. And I don't read much of this genre at all, but when I read this, I was just obsessed. It made me want to read more books like this, because Again, it's not too long, but then the plot, it just keeps you reading, man. You're just so into it, and the twist is really good. It's got all the elements of like a mystery thriller that you want. It's like a bit scary, and there's a twist, and there's creepy people, but there's also not too many characters and things to follow, so it's not too confusing. There's like just a main group of about 4 people. So it's really easy to keep track of the story, even though it has quite a confusing concept. Basically, every morning she wakes up, she can't remember anything. She doesn't know who she is. And that happens every morning. So she basically writes a diary to try and keep track of things. So yeah, it's just a really, really good book, and I definitely recommend it.
My next one is for the genre of modernism. I study this quite a lot. It's one of my favourite like time periods in English, and I would recommend Return of the Soldier by Rebecca West. I studied this for my modernist module in 2nd year, and it was just a really, really good read. It's like what Laura was talking about. It's got literary fiction elements. It's really, really smart. It's about a man that comes back from the war, and he's got amnesia, and it's how his wife and his best friend cope with it. And it's just a really, really good book, and it really makes you think. And it's also very, very small, and my copy has huge font. So I would recommend it if you want to get into like classics, but also more like modern classics.
My next genre is poetry. I don't read loads of poetry, and again, in terms of modern poetry, I know a lot of people have been reading like Milk and Honey, that one that's been going around. But my first like modern poet that I really like, and he's still alive and kicking, is Simon Armitage. Yorkshire bloke, I think he's Yorkshire, UK poet, and we studied his poem about 9/11 called Out of the Blue in like year 9 or year 10. I absolutely loved it, and I've read quite a few of his like collections since. They're really readable. Some of them you kind of don't really get, and other ones they're easier to understand, like the deeper meaning, and they're just really, really readable and talk about quite a lot of modern things. So he's definitely a poet to like look out for if you want to get into more modern poets, but the less like hyped up ones. He's really, really good.
My last genre is alternative reality. I had 2 for this, but both of them are like what would happen if like the war went a different way. But I choose Frontlines by Michael Grant. It's about a group of girls that fought in the war in America because they allowed girls to enlist, and it's just so good, because I was a bit worried that it was going to be a bit girly and they were going to get all the priorities all wrong, but it's amazing. But it's also got like what girls would actually be like. It's like some of them prefer guys and they don't take it seriously, and some of them like a proper like heroines are. It's so good, and I really recommend it.
My last genre is graphic novels, because I've read quite a few now, and I know it's like a genre that a lot of people hear about and are scared to delve into. Some of the really famous ones like Saga as well, I don't think are good starting places because they're really confusing. So I've got 2. The first one is Through the Woods by Emily Carroll, because this one doesn't have too much text. It's basically mostly pictures, but the art is gorgeous. So if you're kind of not sure what the hype is about with graphic novels, this is kind of a good example of how the art really adds to the story, and how it's kind of like reading a film. So it can get you into that kind of mode of what reading a graphic novel is like, and it's really quick and creepy, and this is just really, really good art and good writing, and it's a good starting place. But if you wanted something with a little bit more like character and plot, then I recommend Rat Queens. All 3 volumes are really, really good. The art is really good. They're really diverse characters, like badass women, but I think like men and women would both like it. It's not like too aimed at women. It's just really, really good and badass, and unfortunately I don't know how much it's going to carry on with because there's been a bit of controversy around the author. But either way, read what there is of it because it's great, and I recommend those 2 graphic novels for really good starting places.
So those are our top 5 gateway books into genres. We've just randomly chose genres. We were looking for our good reads, like that was a good book, I enjoyed that, let's put that into a category. But I think it's worked really well, and I hope you enjoy getting into these genres.
Let us know down below which books we should read to get us into some genres we don't like. Maybe you could recommend a really good historical fiction that will change my mind. If it's Wolf Hall though, then just,
don't bother. I will see you on the next video.
Bye.